like
We've been
to say.
seeing pictures of Bev Taylor.
You might see more. We're joined by
it.
Dr. Annie Hunterkamp and Nigel Nelson in the studio. They've been squabbling off air, so let's just carry on squabbling on air. Finally, your leader. He speaks. He has a view. And he's spoken on the Supreme Court ruling, Nigel.
I have not heard... This is this morning, obviously,
yes.
and I have not heard him, so...
Well, he says a woman is a woman.
So the woman is an adult female.
A woman is an adult female.
And unequivocally supported the ruling.
Right. Well, the next stage for all this is going to be how you sort out the Gender Recognition Act.
You scrap it.
Where we have a situation where...
Now, this came from 2004, before the Equalities Act.
Yes, that's right. But there's still the situation where a man can be a woman officially on the basis they can change their birth certificate and their passport.
So the gender recognition certificate, which costs £5, is pretty much redundant now.
Well, it's not redundant. I mean, not many people actually use it.
Well, I think there's only 10,000 anyway.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's 8,000 since it actually started.
Yeah,
but the point about that is that you have to prove, or you have to have a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. You have to live in your acquired gender for 2 years.
How do you live as another sex for 2 years?
You just wear the other clothes. That's it.
What, is that it? You just wear different clothes?
Well, I mean, it depends how you want to live in that.
It's a genuine
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you prove that.
But Nigel does have a point. We now have this situation where you can change your sex on your birth certificate if you follow this process. But it doesn't mean anything in law and life because you now, we assume, will be excluded from single-sex babies.
Right, and also it's dangerous. And I explained this to Nigel this morning, that if I'm a doctor and you, Miriam, which I am, I forgot that for a moment, and you come to me, but you are actually a man, but you look like a woman, and your medical records have been changed to tell me that you're a man, and you come in, or the other way around, whatever it is. Say you come in, you're a man, but you were a woman, and you've got tummy ache, and I do all of the investigations that I need to do, but the one thing I don't investigate is ovarian cancer because you're a man, you don't have ovaries. I miss your cancer early and you then represent later with terminal ovarian cancer. Whose fault is it? Yeah. Is it mine? Is it yours? This is a nonsense. We need to scrap the Gender Recognition Act and rescind all of the certificates. I don't mind how anybody wants to live. If they want to live looking like a woman with a dress on and high heels and whatever it is they feel makes a woman, that's fine. But what they can't do or shouldn't be able to do is change data, because data is how we plan societies. We won't be able to plan for our prisons, for our health services, for our schools, anything else.
I get that. I'm just being devil's advocate because I'm with you 100%. But Nigel's point, what do we do about the person who has fully transitioned from male to female?
Which are very few.
Which are very few, but they exist. Where do they there's a public loo, male and female, where do they go?
Well, as I've always said, as a woman, my job is not to find their solutions for them. My job is to protect women and women's spaces. The solution,
on their own, then?
They have to find their own solutions. Now, be that maybe it's a third
but the
space.
solution there is a unisex toilet.
Or a disabled toilet if there is not a unisex toilet.
It's a third space.
Because I think the point...
And there's lots of those now around anyway, let's be honest.
Yes. And the point that's often missed in this is the reason for single-sex toilets is not just because women like to go in there and do their makeup together. It's because, sadly, almost all sex offences are committed by men. It's still a tiny proportion of men, obviously, but in intimate spaces...
don't know who they are.
Exactly. And transitioning from male to female does not change the pattern of male sex offence. It doesn't. In fact, there are proportionally much more trans women, so men, in prison for sex offences than there are non-trans men.
I wonder why that is.
I think some of it is because they transition after the offence to try and go to a female prison. But I think Miriam's right.
You're tiny groups of people here.
I know we are, but you know what?
If men are allowed to go in women's toilets, predatory men will do that on purpose.
Isn't that the whole point? Tiny group of people, and yet this whole country seems to have been consumed by this.
Well, no, it's not. I don't think that's untrue. I think that the chattering classes have been consumed by it.
The Supreme Court had to rule on this.
They did,
because of what madness was going on in Scotland.
Yes, you go back to what the Supreme Court was actually doing. What they were ruling on was the membership of public bodies, public boards, where the Scots had decided on 50-50 male-female. The ridiculous situation that would have created because they allowed trans women to identify as female is you could have ended up with a board
With no women on
100%
it.
biological male.
Yeah.
And
So-
still said it was 50-50.
Yeah, so the whole point was the court saw this was a ridiculous situation. What they've actually said is that biological sex can't be changed. That's the most important thing. What effect that will have on behaviour we'll have to see. But that's all they did. They didn't set an obligation on organisations to change their practices.
But,
what it meant
Nigel-
was that organisations can change their practices if they wished. In women's sport, it would be particularly important because it means you could ban trans women from female events without any fear of any court action afterwards.
But there
you
was an
just-
obligation, wasn't there? Because doesn't it, the impact of the ruling is that if you provide a single-sex service, it has to now be single-sex.
So I think what it means is if you decide that it's not going to be single sex and a woman complains, then you have to bend to her
Yes, that's
view.
right.
Yes,
Yes.
that's what it means. But the point that you made there, Nigel, about you now don't have the right to change your biological sex renders gender recognition certificates null and void, and it also
No, because you can change your gender.
Gender isn't sex.
That's right. But you can change
It's
your
a social
gender.
construct. But it also means that all data, from police records to medical records, should go back to reflect biological sex.
Is there, I'm getting on to play devil's advocate again, if, for instance, at a women's only space at a changing room, what if the woman is, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, what I would call a butch, masculine-looking woman, maybe a lesbian, chooses to wear all-male clothes, Doc Martens. Is someone going to have to, is it then someone's job to say, excuse me, are you a man or a woman?
I mean, I think that could happen potentially.
And that
I don't think it
potentially
will,
is difficult, is
because
it?
those women have always existed.
Yes.
And I've never been in a changing room and looked at one of those women. You know who they
I
are,
think that.
and
But
thought
I
to
heard
myself,
someone making this point on a radio program, and I thought,
well, of course they are, because
dilemma.
they're trying to obfuscate
Yeah.
the real facts here. And I think the fact that we've seen these people out protesting this weekend, and we will again next weekend, we have on the one hand people like Peter Tatchell saying this has made no difference whatsoever. Well, if it's made no difference, what are they protesting?
Good point.
Just before you go, Nigel, this is going to be a problem for the Labour Party because although Keir Starmer has spoken and Bridget Phillipson has spoken, by the way, she's done a 180-degree turn today, by the way, in favour of the court ruling. We saw in the Mail on Sunday yesterday those WhatsApp groups.
Yeah.
Lots of Labour MPs really unhappy and saying, how can we circumvent and subvert this ruling?
Well, they shouldn't do that. They shouldn't subvert it. But and again, let's make clear where the responsibility lies. Parliament makes the laws. The courts interpret them. The issue for the government now is how you actually apply the ruling that the judges have given. I think the biggest problem is going to end up in the NHS.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we were arguing about outside is, do you, for instance, return to mixed-sex wards?
I think that's the most bizarre interpretation.
I
of
don't
this
suggest
ruling.
we do.
Well,
I'm saying that if you...
We will continue the debate in the next hour, I'm sure.
There should be no mixed sex.
No,
They were
of
supposed to
course
have done
not.
I agree
years
with
ago.
you, but that's what you end up with.
We need to move on to the headlines. We'll have you guys back in an hour.